let it never be said that I'm not willing to amend my reviews in the face of new information. And after doing my Scandal Mirror album review and talking about the one song that I always had to skip, the one song on the album that I found disappointing, well, I've been invited to do exactly that, amend my review. So I'm here to kind of make a bit of a retraction, but only a partial retraction. We are, of course, talking about, okay, here we go, Ao no naru yoru no suki mare. Let's just call it track 8 for now. This is a very personal song written by Haruna about the loss of a fellow musician friend, but it also makes it rather hard to review because myself, I like to focus on how much impact the song has on the listener rather than where the song necessarily came from or why it was written. Otherwise, it can be like if you watch a movie and you don't understand it and then someone scoffs at you and goes, well, of course you didn't understand it, you didn't read the book. You can't help but feel, yeah, but shouldn't it have just been enough on its own? So here I'm returning to this song to maybe view it from more different perspectives, both more in the know and also reviewing it again with the understanding of the lyrics, because I should point out, as you probably noticed from my reading of the song name, that my Japanese is not really as good as it should be. I can muddle childishly through conversations here in Japan, but you know, I've still got a way to improve. So given that fact, and also the fact that personally I'm not much of a lyrics person usually, I tend to not really look at the lyrics. I just look at the impact of the song, and that's what I was doing when I first reviewed it. Although I do say that I'm not much of a lyrics person, this wouldn't be the first time that I've sat down with a song and the lyrics and suddenly found it was rather reframed. The example that I often come back to is Yoshida-san by Silent Siren, which when I first reviewed it as just a song, I said was good, but the lyrical delivery was a little bit too hectic and panicky for what was essentially a fun rock and roll song. However, then going back and looking at the lyrics, I realised that this was a song about angst, about panic, about feeling out of place in a more friendly environment, and suddenly that juxtaposition in the song was properly framed, and it did kind of make a sense. You could see that the words were there to give a context to the music, and not just the music giving context to the words. So when I first heard track 8 and gave it that review where I described it as a plodding, dull, lacking in detail song that didn't highlight any of Scandal's usual qualities, feeling almost out of character for them, I was approached by two of the mods for our Discord community, two long-time followers and helpers of the channel, who pointed out some interesting things. First of all, one of them, who is probably the biggest Scandal fan I know, maybe the biggest Scandal fan in the world, he's really into lyrics, and he immediately highlighted that the lyrics had a lot of meaning behind them. The other one was a follower who's big into live music and said you should check out the live version of this because the emotion comes through in the performance. Therefore, maybe this song, which as I say I found oversimplistic, can actually be rescued through its meaning. It can be given more of a feeling of purpose and depth. So anyway, enough setting the scene, let's amend this review. And firstly, I am going to talk about the lyrics. I sat down, I read them, I went through them both in Japanese and English and really tried to get a feeling for them, and there is no doubt these lyrics are actually really beautiful, really heartfelt, and they're quite poetic as well. Now, this is one of the interesting things, this is one of the strengths of these lyrics, is that they are a tad ambiguous. You can definitely feel the passion and the loss in the lyrics, but at the same time, that ambiguity means that a casual listener feels that rather than maybe just listening to Haruna's story, there is that room for them to imprint their own feelings on there. So if you're going through something yourself, listening to this, it could be almost a cathartic experience for anyone who's going through loss, and that is a real strength in the lyrics. If you're looking for a personal account of Haruna's grief, her story, or if you just want to listen to a story, this is not really that type of song. But as I say, I think that this is actually more of a useful song, a song that certainly would sit up more to replays because of that fact that it's more accessible. And furthermore, the fact that there's an honesty beneath the poetic lyrics, they're not just flowering, there is a feeling, there's something heartfelt in the lyrics. That elevates it beyond some other songs that could be slightly less heartfelt, or maybe even on the far end of the scale, some songs that are emotionally manipulative in how emotional they try to be. This feels real, it feels genuine, and that's something that I think comes from the fact of, well, the story behind it, without you having to know that story in any detail. So I have to give it a thumbs up there. Props to the lyrics. They are actually really an improvement to my review when I consider them. So what about the live video? Does it help improve the song itself? Well, I must point out that when I actually pressed play on the live video, I suddenly realised that I had seen this video before. It does actually predate the release of the album by a few months. And when I listened to it, I suddenly remembered that this is actually much more emotional than the feeling I got from listening to the album version, probably one of the reasons why I didn't equate the two together. And I think a lot of that comes from the superb backing vocals that give a much more human feel to the delivery. And, you know, the backing vocals are one of the real strengths of Scandal, one of their best weapons to whip out and use when they want to make the most of their songs. I've always liked the fact they have multiple singers in their group who can give a different front sound to a song, but when they're working as backing vocals and they're all working as a team, that for me is where they're really, really strong. So yeah, I can't deny the sound is actually better, and it really benefits from having that more tangible human sound that really plays to the emotional qualities of the song as well. However, I can't help but remember that when I first saw this video and when I rewatched it, as nice as the sound was, by the end of the song, I was kind of bored. See, yes, it does sound much more human and it does work in kind of almost like a lullaby way, but it doesn't fix the inherent flaws with the arrangement and just kind of the lackluster songwriting, which I do consider to be rather out of character for Scandal. Now, I should point out that I do often defend songs that are rather simple. I do like complex songs, but I very often defend rather simple songs as well, because as I've said, a song doesn't need to be complicated to be good, and a lot of that can come from bands like Scandal who are very good at adding little bits of nuance, little bit of detail in there in the way they perform it, and just having the right little fills, the right little moments in the right places. However, this doesn't do that. Where Scandal can usually take a simple song and make it interesting by just having the right chord change happen in the right place, this just plods lazily between a couple of chords with no real feeling that it's building up. Whereas usually you've got Rena adding the little bits of drumline here and there that give you an extra feel. This just kind of bangs along with no real detail in it. And that can be said as well of the masterful Tomomi's performance on bass and Mami's guitar playing, as I say. And the lackluster melody, it just kind of feels like, as I said before, they're performing almost as though effort is on ration here. And I am once again trying to justify this against the fact that simple music is not always bad. To give you an example, let's take, say, the first movement from Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. That has no lyrics, obviously. It has one instrument, very few chords, very slow developing, and yet I don't think anyone could argue that is one of the most clear, emotional pieces of music. You know exactly what you're supposed to feel, and boy do you feel it when you hear that. I'm not saying that every song has to be an absolute classic of emotional delivery through songwriting. However, this just feels like it's not up to Scandal's standards, which are usually very high. So if I come back to my initial review, I could almost say that the extra context of now knowing not only how good Scandal are as a band, which I knew before, but how emotionally meaningful this song is, probably actually makes it even more frustrating for me. I mean, I was going to use the example of saying that it's like watching the Mona Lisa being painted by children with crayons, you know, something of incredible beauty, somewhat scuppered by the delivery, but that would insinuate that Scandal don't already have the talent. They do have the talent, so they've proved it for years and years. For me, this probably feels more like Da Vinci taking a lot of sleeping pills, pouring himself a Jack Daniels, and then trying to draw the Mona Lisa on a post-it note with a blunt pencil. He could probably do something amazing, and I'm not denying this is not a bad song, it's just not up to the potential that I feel it deserves. So in that sense, that part of my review is still the same. However, now having heard how much more beautiful this song sounds when played live by them, and understanding how good those lyrics are, simple, but really just nailing everything right in a way that I kind of wish the arrangement was doing, I can now see another perspective. This song doesn't fit what I like from Scandal, but I can see very much what it would fit from someone else. If you're the sort of person who puts lyrics first, if you're the sort of person who focuses in on the lyrics and then allows the song to build a context around it. It's quite possible that you could hear this and you could really hear the beauty of the delivery. I once again recommend watching the live or listening to the live version so that you get the extra sort of humanity in the performance as well. And I feel that that's something where maybe the lyrics could infuse the rest of the song with meaning, and it could really be something beautiful that if you were in the correct mood, you could just vibe with. It could be cathartic, it could work for you, it could give you something really special. I can now see that point of view. However, if you're more like me and the music is what you get the emotion from and the lyrics are kind of like the cherry on the cake, if the music is where you build up your feeling of what the meaning and depth of a song is, I feel that this is going to feel confusingly like a poem that's being beautifully delivered over a lackluster and questionable backing. That's the curious thing, actually. When I read the lyrics on their own and went through them a couple of times trying to pick up the Japanese version, picking up the English translation I had, I kind of got a bit of a lump in my throat from looking at that. I was like, I see that there's a real beauty to this. And then when I listened to the song again, I kind of felt myself falling asleep. For me, this is a really beautiful poem. It's not what I want from Scandal, but it's a beautiful poem. And that's really what this comes down to. I can't personally say I'm going to give this song a rave review, and yet when I see it as a product to be viewed by the listener, there's two very different ways of approaching this type of song, and who you are as a listener is really going to define whether this is one of the best Scandal songs or one of the ones which you just can't understand why you wouldn't skip every single time. So yeah, track 8's got a lot more value than I perhaps gave it credit for on first listen, and I do therefore partially retract my review based on what I just said in my conclusion. However, as always, it's time for you to get in the comments and say what you think. Music is subjective after all, and this wouldn't be any fun if we didn't have a good conversation to follow it up. So please tell me what you think in the comments. I look forward to reading them, speaking to you, and hopefully seeing you soon here in Japan. But until then, for now, ciao ciao.